Chapter 6. Homemade Toys. When I was a small boy, we did not have extra money to buy a pretty red wagon from the store. My older brother Tom was a real good thinker. We were sawing firewood and got Dad to let us have 4 wooden wheels, which were 10 inches in diameter and 2 inches thick. I remember Tom taking the auger and bit, and we drilled a hole through the center of each wooden wheel. Next, we got 2 wooden axles that were about 2 feet long. It was a big job to get the ends whittled down so they would go through the wheel. Finally, we got the wagon together with a few short planks. The wagon was heavy to pull, but once we got it to the top of the hill, we could ride down gravity style. The steeper the hill, the better, because the old wagon would move even faster. My first gun is what I called a pop gun. I took an elder about an inch in diameter and pressed the soft pulp out from the inside. I had me a hollow piece of wood between 1 foot and 18 inches long. I used a solid stick that was long enough to go through the hole. I chewed up brown paper or spit paper of any type when it was wet. I would tamp the wet spit wad into one end of the gun. Next, I needed another spit wad for the other end. I would blow air into the open end, at the same time press my wad to the end. Now the pop gun was loaded. I aimed it at what I desired to hit and pressed the solid stick. The spit wad went out the end. It would shoot so hard that I did not want any more. The back of the people's necks and their rears were my favorite targets. Once, at the country school, a boy did not mean to let his gun go off. The teacher sat quietly at her desk while the students were stuttering. One boy had his pop gun out, and it went off. Everybody jumped like they had been shot. The big brown spit wad stuck to the ceiling. Most people know what stilts are and how high one can walk. We made our stilts from straight poles that we would cut in the woods. I would get my stilts beside a plank fence. If I ever stepped into a crayfish hole, usually I would fall. The most dangerous toy I made was the slingshot. I suppose it was a forked piece of wood with 2 very flexible rubber bands, one on each post, and a leather pad to hold the rock on the other end. If properly used, an eye could have been lost. Windows and chicken legs would have been broken, and chickens would have been killed, etc. I knew boys who would knock squirrels out of trees and kill rabbits. Many a bird was killed by my slingshot. We also made bird boxes or bird houses. And when I grew up on the farm, martins, bluebirds, blackbirds, English sparrows, and wrens usually occupied those very houses. A little wren could go through a hole about the size of a nickel. I gathered up pieces and put my first bicycle together. I remember painting it black and trimming it white. I could go ride without holding onto the grips. I stood on the seat and held onto the handlebars for riding over hills. Yes, I did my fair share of showing off. Our homemade balloon was tough toy. You know that footballs are made from pigskins. Around Thanksgiving or Christmas, we would kill hogs. I always look forward to getting my hands on a big hog bladder. I would wash the bladder as clean as I could. Pouring soapy water into the bladder was somewhat difficult, though, because of the small hole. Even after all the soapy water and cleaning, that hog bladder still sported a pissy color, an odor. Someone might wonder how I got air into the bladder without putting my mouth to it. I took a 6-inch piece of cane, which many people use for fishing poles. I inserted a small piece of cane into the bladder hole. I would blow and blow until my jaws hurt from blowing so hard, and when the balloon was inflated as far as I could make it, a piece of feed sack string tied to the balloon shut. You could punch, kick, hit the bladder balloon with a stick, and have all kinds of fun with it. Most girls did not want to smell my balloon because of the urine aroma. Somehow, a country boy always finds a way to have fun. They see things and make good use of them. Chapter 6. Long-eared mules. I remember that I was around 4 years old when 2 additions were brought to the little farm. They were white and black mules named Jack and Joe, respectively. I know Dad had to show them who was boss because they had a stubborn streak. He took a chain and he would whip the meanest right out of them. These mules got the best care in the world in the way of corn and hay. Everybody always talked about how nice they looked. The white mule, Jack, was always a little gentler. If Dad had worked on one mule, it would be Jack. He would plow the garden and tobacco with a 3-foot cultivator we called a rastus plow. The mule would walk about 2 inches from the row of plants and not step on any, so Dad could plow it really well. Jack had a personality, and we children would do more with him than with the other mules. Jack would be caught out in the open field, and we rode him without a bridle. He was a honey of a mule that could even saddle along instead of trot. I could turn around and face his rear while riding. My poem about Jack followed. I have a little mule. His name is Jack. I put him in the stable. He's crawled out the crack. Both mules were short and stocky. When we got electricity in the 40s, I remember Dad used Jack to pull the big electric poles through the plow fields to the stationary holes. These mules were used to us riding them, pulling our wagon, which I remember going to church in a few times, plowing the field, dragging the ground, disking, harrowing, planting fields, and harvesting the fields. Before we could put harnesses on the mules, we would carry them down and get all the loose hair and dirt off of them. The collar that went around their necks and placed against their shoulders had to be free of dirt, or bad sores would have developed on our mule. Once in a while, I would stand back and rub the mule on the belly, getting a little closer to its cock. A few times I got a hold of it. Real slow and easy, I watched the mule twitch his ears. It felt like a piece of velvet. He would become agitated and grow, and I would quit. I never did let Dad see me do this. If I had ever become a veterinarian, I would have a jump on some people. All I can say is that it takes plenty of soap and water to get one's hands clean after that. I remember turning around sometimes with him. The plow once hit a rock, and the plow hit my left rib so hard that they almost broke. I ended up with bruised ribs and decided that plowing was a man's job. As a young boy, sitting on a drag and dragging the ground before the disc was a lot of fun. Also, we dragged to burst the clots of dirt to the level of ground. If the ground was real dry, it could be a dusty job. I could write my initials on the dusty pant leg and also blow mud out of my nose. The mules worked so hard together that they even went to the bathroom at the same time. They would be working along really good when one would stop to piss before he finished. The other mule would spread his hind legs and start pissing too. If I had a stopped-up head, this piss would clear it out. Boy, did it stink. Dad told me to sit down on the drag, and I would not come as near to getting hurt. You see, when it was 90 to 95 degrees out, the the team would get very hot and tired. I thought I would stand up on the drag since Dad was not around. All went well for a little while, until the mule stopped without me telling them to do so, and I stepped off the front edge of the drag, and the mule started again, catching my leg underneath the drag. I finally got the mule stopped and looked at my bruised skin legs. Father knew best, so I set my butt down and finished the dragging. Skiing was a lot of fun too, because I had sat in a seat about 3 feet off the ground. Disking could be nerve-wracking if one got into rocky ground where the disc hit all those rocks. Like most jobs, they get boring. One time, I was disking, going around and around in the big field. I was almost asleep from watching the dirt turn over and over again. All at once, the disc hit a big rock, and off I went. I fell in front of the disc, and at the same time, I hollered, "Wow!" and the disc stopped right in front of me. The disc did not have all its weight on me because the rock still held it up. My back hit the ground, and it scared me. I managed to get out from under the disc with only a scratch on my arm and a knot on my head. One time of that was enough, so I stayed awake from that point on. Harrowing was a job that I loved to do. When the corn got about 5 inches high, Dad always wanted me to get it harrowed. The harrow had a lot of metal teeth that would loosen the ground and kill the weeds. You can picture a 12-year-old boy behind a harrow with a guideline in each hand. Those mules could do number 2 without doing number 1. Old Jack would just keep on walking while the manure rolled right out of him. My bare feet smashed on those slick, warm, absurd turds right into the ground. He would usually top his shit off with that big old fart, which drifted right past my nose. I have smelled many of them because I was right in the firing line. I believe that going barefoot helped my feet. Too much glass and junk is scattered about for children to go barefoot today. My feet got the heat therapy in more than one way back then. With no bath in the house back then, we boys would head to the pond with a cake of soap and a wash rag. We washed up real clean and then swam for an hour in the pond, jaybird style, which is naked. I would put on a clean pair of breeches, and I felt good as new. My older brother Tom and I would ride those mules to see my grandfather, visit the feed mill, go to the store, and for pleasure riding. One day we were out riding, and as Jack jumped a small ditch, I fell off and hit the ground pretty hard. I was about half stunned because I asked my older brother if I was hurt. He said he did not know, and then I had to get up and see how I felt. These mules proved to be good ones because Dad still had them at home when I joined the Navy. I have heard it said that the mule, pinto beans, cornbread, and gravy pulled this country through some hard times. The mule had advantages over the tractor. He knew his owner, enriched the ground with his manure, never polluted the air like a diesel engine does. They had no parts to be replaced, and worked in places a tractor could not get to. As I get older and look back, I wish I had petted the mules more for all they did for my family. Boys growing up on a farm have a lot of barnyard talk. It is really not that dirty, so to speak. These are things I should tell the daughters. These are things I believe a father should tell his sons, and many things a mother should tell a daughter. We are different, and God made us that way. Boys can stand right up, piss against the wall of the barn. Women can lie flat on their backs and have babies. Both male and female should be loved and respected. Both have important roles in life. We had barnyard poems. Here is one about Johnson, the old gray man. Johnson had no gray mare. He worked her in a cart, and every time she raised her tail, she would let a little fart. This is just the way it really was around the animals. One old farmer owned a horse. He named him Simon Sled, and every time he hit that horse, he would hit him on the dick. And there was a poem for an orchard. Apples in the summertime, peaches in the fall. If I can't have that girl of mine, then I don't want any at all. A little garden poem. A rabbit skipped and a rabbit hopped. A rabbit bit my turnip top. The distinguished medical profession has a language that is somewhat different. If you are on a farm and the farmer tells you to stay out of the cow shit, thank him. It is not necessary for him to call it dung or manure or feces or fertilizer. There are times and places for everything. Horse manure used to be common at church, but now we have air pollution and horses are under the hood. Chapter 8. His mom's love for me. It has been said many times that you will never have more than one mom. Generally speaking, the one who brought you into this world will love you and do more for you than anyone else. Mom raised 6 children, and I was number 3. I had gray eyes, while all the rest had brown. I was the only one who had my dad's gray eyes. There are many things my mother did for me that I could never tell. But I will attempt to share a few of her great assets. She was clean around the place, but not fanatical. She was a very good cook, and the floors were swept and mopped. She kept the house dusted, and if I came in the house with mud on my feet or shoes, I had to go to the back to clean them off. And then I would have to clean up the mess I tracked into her house. It is very good to have respect for one where one lives, and to have respect for one's mom and help her. Her talk was like gold. Do it or suffer. We were taught when young what to do and what not to do. A family must have some good regimentation, or the children will end up running the show. A child left on his own way will put his mother to shame. We were taught to work as soon as we could walk. Mother taught me to keep my personal things in a certain place. One does not misplace his or her belongings so easily. If one does this, a mother should work her fingers to the bone by picking up after a lot of children. Good habits can be formed in children that will go to the grave with them. This helps when they go to school, get a job, or get married. Being organized is half your job. Let children do what they can do well. At 6 years old, I could not dig the potatoes or carry the big buckets of potatoes, but I was big enough to pick up potatoes and put them in empty buckets. There is satisfaction for a young child in knowing that he or she is working on only a small part, but that it is essential. The potatoes had to be gathered. I was taught that if one was too lazy to work, then one would have nothing to eat. I knew what Mom could do with those potatoes. She peeled her part of them, fried, mashed, boiled, and baked them, and they were very good in soup as well. Don't waste anything was her motto, because she came through the 1929 Depression. She dried more apples so we could have apple stack cakes, apple turnovers, canned apples, apple cobblers, and apple pie. I asked Mom if we had to pick blackberries again one day. She said yes, because there might not be any next year. Blackberry juice and jams were made also. No one could resist my mama's blackberry cobbler. Empty fruit jars were filled with apples, berries, pork ribs, tenderloins, beans, kraut, peaches, beets, carrots, greens, and so on. Jars of anything seldom spoiled because they were sealed with a loving touch. Mom bought blue denim that made nice shirts, and that's what we would wear to school, church, or anywhere. When she sewed something, it stayed sewed. The buttons stayed on the garments. They were not the kind that I jerked loose, thread, and threw off. The old foot-pedal Singer sewing machine could sew just about anything. Mom had patience that I could never have had. She made a quilt after quilt so we could stay warm on cold nights. Each child was given 3 new quilts when we got married. She tacked some quilts, but most of them were made with small stitches. I would love to get those big wooden spools, which the thread came on, so I could make crawlers. I would cut fine notches on each end of the spools, which would be the wheels. 2 little sticks and rubber bands were needed. The short stick would be slightly less than 3 diameters of one wheel, and the other stick would be 3 times the diameter. I took the rubber band that would not quite reach through the hole and stretch it over the ends of both sticks. I would rub a little soap on the outside of the wheel where the longer stick was positioned. I would then wind the long stick until the rubber band got tight, and when the spool was placed on the floor, I'd turn it loose. I would watch it crawl. That was my homemade crawler. I chased the crawler on the floor while Mom stitched her fingers till her fingers were numb. Mom let us have the liberty to play, fish in the ponds, stay all night with school friends. Her great asset was she knew her children, where they were going, and when they would be home. Don't forget that we also knew what Mom expected of us. The meals prepared by her were so many over the years. I was blessed to have never gone hungry. Just about anything she ever cooked tasted good. As a boy, I always liked raw turnips, but I did not like cooked turnips. Everything she touched seemed better. A cousin of ours was visiting. She did not like his gravy. After he tasted Aunt Lena's gravy, he ate a plateful for breakfast. We were outside playing, and about 2 hours later, my cousin went back to the house to see if he could have more gravy. She made cream pies that would melt in one's mouth. At my great-grandma's birthday dinner, Mom's cake went first. It was all white cake, chopped walnut kernels. Many people were asking who made as I watched it vanish. Mom saw to it that we did our homework assignment from school. She had a real neat handwriting and wanted that out of us too. We were assigned different chores, and we did them without much talk. We would cut the wood, bring it to the wood box, milk the cows, hoe the garden, babysit the small children, wash the dishes, clean out the kitchen house, clean out the chicken house, churn the cream, scrub the hall, etc. As I look back, Mom did not overwork me in the least. Those who love you will always be remembered, even after